Shoes and Stars is the title of a small painting on paper dating from 2015, depicting a Manoletina against a purple night sky filled with stars. It was chosen as the title of the exhibition because it highlights one of the most significant elements of my work, the impossibility of a linear narrative in painting and the necessity of exaggerated contrast. For me, a shoe and a star share as many similarities as they do differences, often forming a circle where the two ends meet. Since my first visit to Çatalhöyük in Turkey and through several artist residencies at ancient Neolithic sites, I have become acutely aware of the importance of scale. The 25,000-year-old Venus of Brazenpois is barely 4 centimeters tall, while the Venus of Willendorf, nearly 30,000 years old, stands just over 11 centimeters tall. Many figurines recovered from the distant past are remarkably small, yet they reveal the artistic power of our ancestors as profoundly as any grand Greek temple. The Manoletina is a type of delicate shoe traditionally worn by bullfighters. It is renowned for its comfort, yet fragility, offering no protection to the feet. The shoe is named after the legendary matador Manolete, the first to wear them. In the background, one can almost imagine the haunting strains of peteneras played by Rafael Marín in the early 20th century. This particular flamenco palo style, Palo of Peteneras, is rooted in the tragic myth of Dolores, a beautiful woman whose life was cut short by men who couldn't bear her independence. The palo is notoriously difficult to perform, and its sorrowful tone, steeped in superstition, even deters some musicians from playing it. I included this element in Shoes and Stars to introduce an additional layer of meaning. The entire exhibition revolves around surreal contrasts, the mysterious and, most importantly, the vulnerability of human beings, as fragile as a Manoletina, as vast as the stars in the universe, and as senseless as the killing of Dolores. Muriel's portrait began over a painting on linen, which initially featured a black silhouette of a woman. Inside the silhouette, I had painted an Assyrian couple and a purró, a traditional Catalan glass vessel used to drink wine. Around the same time, I was also working on a portrait of Alexander the Great, as well as the painting of the burial of Hephaestion, his lover, which is also here on show in the exhibition. As I delved deeper into these themes, Roxana emerged as an image, inspiring a new series of works centered around her. Alexander and Roxana were married in 327 BC. While I completed several portraits of Roxana on paper, the larger canvas did not seem to progress. Gradually, it evolved into a portrait of Muriel, a dear friend who at the time was battling cancer and had undergone a mastectomy. The original composition of the silhouette, the couple and the purró seemed to demand a shift, and Roxana felt like the right figure to continue with. Psychoanalysis has been a valuable tool in my artistic process. My first encounter with therapy came through Ken Keefe, who recommended his own therapist, someone I saw for years. My imagery often emerges from the unconscious, deeply influenced by my daily life, of course, and the experiences of those I love or encounter. Though the unknown remains unknown, painting serves as an effective medium to explore it. I don't aim to draw specific conclusions from the narrative my images present, nor do I wish to analyze them. Far from it. I leave that task to the viewer. Once the images appear, and I sense that they have a life, the painting is complete. This video documents the making of After Mona Lisa, a painting that began in 2019 and gradually evolved until its recent completion. As the video shows, at one point it felt natural to include a living creature nestled between the woman's folded arms. I was grieving the loss of my mother at the time, and the presence of the creature seemed fitting. Equally natural was the decision to remove it later. I have always thought La Gioconde, as she is called in the Louvre, is an overrated painting. Leonardo created far more profound and enigmatic work than this one. For a long time I struggled with the Mona Lisa's eyes in my painting, and eventually they disappeared, soon followed by the entire figure. My decision to erase her was purely formal. The painting simply wasn't working. Earlier, I had completed a portrait of a woman, and I suppose I was still in that portrait-focused mindset. It was, in the end, just an excuse to begin something new. Life moved on, as I did. There was COVID, and I found myself desperately searching for accommodation in London. Those were strange times, and the painting absorbed it all in. What surprised me, though, was how the painting fragmented into so many pieces, and yet, in retrospect, it seemed inevitable. A Syrian man, I mentioned that the paper was unprepared because I chose not to apply a coat of gesso or oil primer to the surface at the beginning. Instead, I wanted to experiment with some very bright printer inks left behind after the printer stopped working. The vibrancy of these inks is extraordinary, although I am unsure about their permanence or whether they will fade over time. The spreading stains produced by the ink became the starting point of the painting's imagery. The ink seemed to cover the paper effectively, and I trust it will act as a barrier between the oil and the paper. As for the symbolism of the Christian cross, the decapitated figure, and the Assyrian man with an erection, I do not claim to know the specific meaning. I prefer not to impose any particular narrative on these elements, leaving interpretation up to the viewer. Assyria was a significant ancient Mesopotamian civilization emerging as a city-state around the 21st century BC and growing into a powerful empire by the 14th century BC, lasting until the 7th century BC. The art from this era has always fascinated me. The British Museum in London houses a remarkable collection, and I often find myself drawn to certain figurines, vessels, or images. These either serve as direct references for my work or emerge organically, embedding themselves into the canvas during the creative process.